All right, so we're going down a rabbit hole today.
Yeah,
A very interesting one.
definitely.
We're diving into the world of Rhett and Link, specifically looking at those moments in GMM that,
hmm
well, make you wonder if there's a bit more to their relationship than just friendship.
Right.
We got a compilation of clips here, and let me tell you, some of these eyebrow-raising moments had me wondering if I should be taking notes and fanning myself.
Well, what's fascinating here is that we're dealing with a layer of performance,
Okay.
right? They're comedians, entertainers. So separating genuine interaction from what's played up for the camera is key.
Oh, absolutely.
But even with that in mind, sometimes what slips out, whether it's a word choice or a look, can be very revealing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, so first up on our list is the Butterfinger Almond Joy game. It's a classic GMM bit, but even I was surprised by how quickly the innuendo escalated. Link's repeated use of smell your almond finger is, well,
Ah.
it's certainly a choice.
You know, repetition is often a sign that something is bubbling up from the subconscious. If it were just a one-off joke, we could dismiss it easily. But the fact that he keeps returning to that phrase suggests it might hold a deeper meaning for him, even if he's not consciously aware of it.
Right, yeah. And then Rhett jumps in with, enjoy my finger. I mean,
Yeah.
come on. You can practically see the air crackle between them.
It creates a very interesting power dynamic.
Yeah.
Link is the one initiating the innuendo,
Yeah.
but Rhett's response, even if intended playfully, escalates the situation further.
Uh-huh.
It's like they're playing a game of verbal tennis, each volley adding to the sexual tension.
Oh, for sure. Speaking of tension, let's move on to the cocktail sauce and tahini challenge. This one, again, starts innocently enough, but take the turn when Link seems fixated on the word cock.
It's interesting to consider the role of humor here.
Okay.
Freud argued that jokes allow us to express forbidden desires in a socially acceptable way.
Right.
So is Link using humor to express something he wouldn't otherwise feel comfortable saying directly?
Possibly. And then he tells Rhett to get under the desk, man. Do it for Tumblr. It's a bizarre request, and the fact that Rhett actually complies makes it even more intriguing.
That compliance is telling.
Yeah.
Brett could easily refuse, but he chooses to play along. It speaks to a certain level of trust and willingness to indulge each other, even in seemingly absurd situations.
Definitely. Okay, so next on our list is the infamous mayo scene. On the surface, it's just Rhett making a sandwich for Link, but the way he instructs Link to go all the way down while holding his hand takes on a whole different meaning in this context.
What's striking here is the shift in their body language.
Yeah.
Rhett becomes more assertive, his touch lingering, and his gaze intense.
Right.
Link, on the other hand, seems to submit to Rhett's dominance, his voice dropping, and his movements becoming more submissive.
It's like something out of a romance novel, but with a sandwich instead of a candlelit dinner.
Mm.
And Link's reaction, his voice gets all breathy, and he actually asks Rhett to hold on tighter.
There's a definite power play happening here. Rhett is taking control, and Link is responding in a way that suggests a certain level of comfort, even enjoyment in being dominated.
Wow. All right, buckle up. Because things get even more intense with the Will It Penis Challenge. The title alone speaks volumes. And their interactions during this segment are, well, let's just say they leave little to the imagination.
This is where the line between playful innuendo and something more overt becomes incredibly blurry.
For sure.
The fact that they're even willing to engage in a challenge with this title suggests a certain comfort level with exploring their sexuality, even if it's under the guise of humor.
Absolutely. Right from the start, Link drops the phrase, straight penis.
Yeah.
And Rhett's reaction is pure flustered chaos. It's like they've accidentally stumbled upon something they weren't quite ready to confront.
That flustered reaction is fascinating.
Yeah.
It suggests that beneath the playful banter, there might be deeper feelings or desires that they're not fully acknowledging, even to themselves.
Right. So we've got a compilation of suggestive jokes, some eyebrow-raising body language, and a whole lot of tension building between Rhett and Link. I'm already feeling a bit overwhelmed, but I'm also incredibly curious to see where this deep dive takes us.
What's emerging is a complex picture of their dynamic.
Yeah.
On the surface, it's playful and comedic, but underneath there are hints of something more intense, something that might even border on the erotic.
Okay, before we get too carried away, let's take a step back and remember that you, our listener, are specifically interested in exploring the possibility of sexual tension between Rhett and Link, and potentially even figuring out who might be the more dominant partner in that scenario. We've seen some pretty compelling evidence so far. There's still a lot more ground to cover.
Exactly. We've only just scratched the surface. As we delve deeper into these GMM moments, we'll be paying close attention to the nuances of their interactions, analyzing their body language, and looking for those subtle clues that might reveal the true nature of their relationship.
All right, well, let's get to it then.
So, it's interesting to consider how Rhett and Link's dynamic plays into traditional masculine archetypes. You pointed out the fish-catching game in your notes. What did you find interesting about that one?
Yeah, that game was fascinating. On the surface, it's just two grown men playing with a toy fish.
Yeah.
But the intensity with which they approach the game is palpable.
Oh.
The way they stare each other down,
Yeah.
trying to anticipate each other's moves, it's almost primal.
It's like they're tapping into a deep-seated competitive instinct.
Yeah.
A need to assert dominance.
Oh, totally.
Notice how their body language changes during the game. They lean forward, their muscles tense, their movements become more exaggerated.
And the trash talk.
Right.
It's relentless.
Right.
But always delivered with a smirk and a twinkle in their eyes. It's like they're flirting with aggression,
Yeah.
using humor as a shield to explore those more primal instincts.
Exactly. And it's worth considering that for many men, physical competition can be a form of intimacy. It's a way to connect, to test boundaries, and to express emotions that might be otherwise difficult to articulate.
So in a way, this seemingly silly game could actually be revealing a deeper level of connection between them.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that playfulness and competition can often be intertwined, especially in male relationships. And the fact that they can engage in this kind of intense rivalry while still maintaining a sense of humor speaks to the strength of their bond.
Okay, let's shift gears to the Micah Puffity challenge. This one was a bit of a head-scratcher for me. They're trying to decipher a mumbled phrase.
Yeah.
And it descends into this chaotic mess of mispronunciations and frustrated groans. Not exactly the most sexually charged scenario, right?
Not on the surface, perhaps, but even in this chaotic scenario, we see moments of connection that hint at something deeper. Notice how their frustration is punctuated with laughter and physical touch. They lean into each other, share smiles, even as they're struggling to communicate.
Yeah, you're right. It's like the shared struggle. The absurdity of the situation creates a sense of intimacy. They're in this together.
Yeah.
United against a common enemy. The indecipherable phrase, Micah Puffity.
Precisely. And there's a certain vulnerability that comes with being unable to understand each other. It forces them to rely on nonverbal communication, on those subtle cues that go beyond words.
Right. And speaking of vulnerability, let's talk about the Orbeez in the ear incident.
Yeah.
Rhett is clearly in distress, desperately trying to dislodge an Orbeez from his ear canal. And Link.
Oh, yes.
He's not exactly offering helpful advice.
It's interesting to see how they navigate the situation.
Yeah.
Rhett is in a vulnerable position, literally and figuratively, and Link's response is a mix of teasing and genuine concern.
Right.
He might be making light of the situation, but he also tries to help, even resorting to sucking on a straw in a misguided attempt to extract the Orbeez.
That's the thing with Rhett and Link, isn't it?
Yeah.
They can be incredibly silly and immature one minute,
Yeah.
and then surprisingly tender and supportive the next. It's like they have this unspoken understanding that allows them to move fluidly between those different modes of interaction.
And that fluidity is what makes their dynamic so fascinating. It defies easy categorization. Are they friends? Rivals? Something more? The answer might be all of the above.
Yeah. So we've seen them compete for dominance, connect through shared struggle, and support each other in moments of vulnerability. It seems like we're starting to get a clearer picture of the multifaceted nature of their relationship. But the question remains, is there a sexual dimension to this dynamic?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've seen hints of it in their playful banter, their suggestive jokes, and their sometimes overtly physical interactions, but it's also possible that we're projecting our own interpretations onto their behavior.
True. But I think it's fair to say that there's a certain level of chemistry between them that goes beyond what we typically see in platonic friendships.
Absolutely. And that chemistry is what makes them so compelling to watch. Whether it's purely platonic or something more, their connection is undeniable.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already, but there's still one more category of GM moments that we need to explore. The will it challenges.
Ah, yes, the will it challenges. These segments are a goldmine of innuendo and suggestive content.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling they might hold some key insights into the question of sexual tension between Rhett and Link.
Okay, let's dive in and see what we can uncover. Okay, so we're back, and it's time to tackle the will it challenges. You know, those segments where Rhett and Link test the limits of pretty much everything. And let me tell you, things get pretty wild.
Yeah, the Will It challenges provide a fascinating lens, I think, through which to examine their dynamic.
Right.
They often involve pushing boundaries, both physically and comedically. And in that process, we see glimpses of their more primal instincts, their desires, and their vulnerabilities.
Right, sure. Okay, let's start with the vacuum challenge. I mean, who knew a vacuum cleaner could be so suggestive? The way they kept talking about getting it in there and reaching new heights.
Yeah.
That poor hot dog is hard not to blush.
It's a classic example of double entendre, right?
Yeah.
On the surface, they're just talking about vacuuming up a hot dog.
Right.
But the language they use is laden with sexual innuendo, whether intentional or not.
And their reactions. The way they high-five and celebrate after successfully vacuuming the wiener. It's like they've achieved some kind of shared victory, a moment of intense connection.
There's a definite sense of shared accomplishment there, and the physicality of it, the leaning in, the touching. It adds another layer to the subtext.
Okay, I'm officially blushing again. But you're right. There's a certain intimacy to that moment that goes beyond just completing a silly challenge.
For sure. And then there's the pubes in the vacuum challenge. I mean, that one is just out there. Who even thinks of that?
I know, right? It's so bizarre, but also strangely compelling. The fact that they're willing to do something so ridiculous on camera to expose themselves, both literally and figuratively, speaks to a certain level of comfort and trust between them.
Yeah, and the way they giggle and tease each other throughout the challenge, it's like they're reveling in the absurdity of it all, in the shared transgression.
You mentioned transgression. Do you think there's an element of that to their dynamic in general? A sense of pushing boundaries, of testing the limits of what's acceptable?
Absolutely. They're constantly playing with fire, whether it's through suggestive jokes, physical challenges, or just their general willingness to be outrageous. And that's what makes them so entertaining. They're not afraid to go there, to explore those taboo subjects that most people shy away from.
So after dissecting all these GMM moments, analyzing their interactions, and pondering the deeper meaning behind their often bizarre antics, what's the verdict? Is there sexual tension between Rhett and Link? And if so, who's the dominant one?
Those are tough questions. We've seen plenty of evidence to suggest that there's a strong attraction between them, a chemistry that goes beyond just friendship.
Right.
But whether they act on those feelings or even fully acknowledge them is ultimately up to them.
As for the question of dominance, it's not a clear-cut answer. We've seen moments where Rhett takes charge and others where Link asserts himself. Perhaps it's a fluid dynamic, shifting depending on the context and the situation.
Or maybe it's not about dominance at all. Maybe it's about a mutual desire to explore, to play, to push each other's buttons and see what happens.
Well, you've definitely given our listener a lot to think about. We've delved into the suggestive jokes, the eyebrow-raising challenges, and the moments of undeniable chemistry between Rhett and Link. And while we may not have definitive answers, we've certainly gained a deeper appreciation for the complexity and ambiguity of their relationship.
Exactly. And sometimes the most intriguing relationships are the ones that defy easy categorization, the ones that leave us wondering, questioning, and coming back for more.
So to our listener who sent in this request, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Rhett and Link. Keep watching, keep analyzing, and keep those fan theories coming. After all, the best mysteries are the ones that never quite get solved.